My husband kicked me out of the house after I punched his mother for slapping me after I gave birth, and now he's begging for another chance after I handed him divorce papers. My situation went from bad to worse in the span of a week, and I don't know where else to turn. I need to know if I was wrong, maybe to validate what I'm feeling, because life is incredibly complicated right now. My wife and I have been together for 8 years, and she just gave birth to our first and last baby 2 months ago. Until my wife got pregnant, my mother loved her. I'm not sure what's wrong with my mother or why the change happened, but after my wife got pregnant, my mother became very attached to me and started avoiding my wife at all costs. She told everyone she wasn't excited about the pregnancy. I threatened to cut off contact with her when my wife was about 7 months pregnant, and after that, she mostly returned to normal and stopped being so ignorant. The comments completely stopped, although she was still very attached to me. Now, a week ago, my mother, my sister's husband, and my sister's 12-year-old daughter came over for dinner. I had prepared the meal before my wife could eat anything. Our daughter became restless, so my wife excused herself to go feed the baby and put her to sleep. I thought I had prepared enough, but apparently not, because my niece was still hungry. She is 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs 190 pounds. I hadn't seen her in a year, and she wasn't that size then, so I hadn't accounted for extra portions for 3 people for a child, so that was on me. I apologized and told her I hadn't made more and offered her crackers. While I was putting my wife's portion in the fridge, I went outside with my sister's husband to smoke a cigarette and chat. I didn't think anything of it, but then I heard yelling from inside. When I walked in, my wife and my mother were screaming at each other. Apparently, my mother, who saw me put my wife's food away, gave my niece my wife's portion. As I walked inside, I heard my mother say, "Looks like you can afford to skip a meal," and she slapped my wife's stomach. Just as I was getting ready to step in, literally fast walking toward them and yelling enough, my wife recoiled and punched my mother square in the face, dropping her to the floor. The whole house went silent except for my mother sobbing as she held her face. I told everyone to get out immediately. Everyone left, and my wife just turned toward the counter and leaned on it with her hands, head down, eyes closed. I looked at my wife and said, "You too leave now." She said, "Really?" She was already crying at this point. I said a short yes. She packed up and left with the baby. That night, I texted her saying I just needed space, that I needed to decompress and come to terms with what had just happened. She didn't respond. Over the next 5 days, I texted and called, but got nothing. Today she showed up here, 8 days later, and handed me divorce papers and said, "Here, you have some time to spend with her while I pack. We can work out a visitation schedule that's either at your place or my mother's until she takes a bottle." I told her that wasn't what I wanted, that I didn't want to separate, that I just needed time to process her punching my mother in the face. She replied, "The time you needed to process gave me time to process the fact that I refused to stay in this situation any longer." I defended myself. Initially, I felt bad and remorseful, but you kicking me out when I needed you made me see things more clearly. It's over. I'm sorry for what I did, but there's no going back. She refused to speak to me the whole time she was here. My house feels so empty, and I don't know what to do. Am I the villain for making her leave after she punched my mother? I just needed some space. For the record, I'm on my wife's side. My mother completely deserved it, and I have completely blocked her from my life. I literally just needed time to process what happened. My wife is many things, but violent is not one of them, so this completely caught me off guard, and it wouldn't have happened without provocation. After it all happened, my mother sent me a message saying, "See? I told you she was crazy. That overweight woman doesn't belong in our lives." I'm willing to bet my mother deliberately tried to set my wife off, so no, I'm on my wife's side. I really just needed to process what happened, and my wife took it as me giving up on her, not defending her, and throwing her and our baby out, which essentially did happen because I knew she would have to take the baby with her when I kicked her out. The reason why my father was stupid and abusive. He beat me, my sisters, and my brother. My mother was hospitalized multiple times. It took years for the police to enforce restraining orders, and he finally died in 2013. Violence scares me, makes me nervous and anxious around any kind of violence. Now my wife knows this, and she too grew up with a violent father, a stepfather, and she gets just as anxious and panicky around violence. My wife punching my mother in the face triggered an anxious response, and I needed her gone in that moment, needed her far away from me. I don't know why I didn't just leave. I could have, but in that moment, I let my emotions and fear run everything, and I told everyone to get out, including her. My mother slapped her first. I guess for some reason, I saw my wife's punch as worse than the slap. It wasn't a hard slap, but my wife did recoil in pain. Looking back now, she was fine afterward, but my mother was bleeding, with a split eyebrow. I don't know, thanks for the responses. I'm the villain, I'm going to try to fix things now. My mother hurt her. She slapped her on the stomach, and my wife recoiled in pain before punching her in the face, as other people have already pointed out. I guess new mothers have muscles separated in their abdomen, so given the force with which my mother slapped her on the stomach, just below the ribcage, a backhanded slap that could be heard from the door, I guess it's comparable to hitting my wife's internal organs because her stomach muscles aren't healed. I just learned that, I don't know. I can't justify it, I just let my own fear take over the situation. Violence scares me a lot. I watched my mother get beaten for years. My siblings and I were beaten too, but we weren't hospitalized. My wife punching my mother immediately made the room spin, and I wasn't thinking about the consequences of my actions from that point forward. I'm fully aware that my niece is overweight. I'm assuming my mother made her that way. She lives with her. She did the same with all her kids growing up. We were all overweight kids because she overfed us, meaning overweight kids are happy kids. Nothing that night made sense. I'm starting to see that. My wife sent me a message about 10 minutes ago saying, "Look up emotional incest," with no context. That definitely describes what my mother is doing. I have completely blocked her, but that won't help my case. Update 2 months later by the wife. I'm still grieving the loss of my marriage, but a friend informed me about my husband's post, which had too many specific details that were hard to ignore. To clarify, this is my first time here. I read my husband's post, who will soon be my ex-husband, and I wanted to give my side of the story and include details he didn't provide in his post. For those who didn't read the post, in summary, my husband kicked me out of the house after his mother slapped me on the stomach in front of him, and I punched her in self-defense. I loved my husband deeply, but his lack of action regarding his mother's behavior was extremely disgusting, to say the least. I tolerated his mother's behavior until I couldn't anymore because he repeatedly ignored his mother's behavior until I finally reached my limit. Story 2. I was engaged to my girlfriend. We had been together for about 3 years. We took our friends out to celebrate. We all got a little drunk, and her friend started spilling some stuff about my girlfriend's past. The friend said that my girlfriend had finally managed to control her dark side and that she could never control herself around her friend, more specifically her male friend, let's call him Bob. So from what I heard about Bob, they used to have sexual relations regularly. After we got home, I asked my girlfriend more questions about her self-control. I had to press her, and she confessed that she had cheated on her ex-boyfriends with Bob and that Bob had cheated with her. She confessed that her exes never found out. Bob and she still see each other from time to time. They've been friends since college. And now I'm here, being her boyfriend, who is now her fiancé, with almost no trust in her. I asked her to return the ring, and she insisted that nothing happened with Bob since we got together. But after learning all of this, I just don't believe her. Relevant comments. She should, by her own choice, cut off contact with Bob if she's really serious about a future relationship with you. If she gets defensive, I wouldn't ever trust her. Her tendency to cheat is either a property of hers alone or a property of hers with Bob. If she does not want to cut off contact with Bob, then she is purposefully arranging for opportunities to lose control. But you are already starting at a disadvantage if you decide to pursue a relationship with a habitual cheater. She has already passed so many of the barriers that would otherwise protect you. Chances are that you wouldn't sense anything was wrong because she already has the cheater mindset. Her wandering eye is the norm. You're not the villain. Seeing her past actions, you decided that you could no longer see her the same way, nor could you trust her. And in a 3-year relationship, I believe this topic should have been brought up by her long ago since it is an issue she had with her exes. As you mentioned, none of her exes found out, which means that she was good at hiding it, hence giving you more reason to believe she might be cheating on you too. Update. I broke up with her. I told her that I needed to see her phone if she wanted me to even consider staying with her. I dug through her texts and messages. I found out that she had messaged Bob about missing him about a year ago. Bob asked to meet up after talking about all the sexual relations they used to have, and my girlfriend only turned him down because I had moved in with her at that point. Her message was, "Wish I could, but my boyfriend moved in with me. I'll let you know if I get a chance though. I'm done. I packed my stuff and am moving in with my parents." My girlfriend apologized for those messages and insists nothing actually happened, but yes, sure, only because she couldn't. Thanks for all the support, by the way. Also, I swear some of you could catch your partner with another person, but as long as you didn't actually see them having sexual relations, you'd be all like, well, there's no evidence they actually did, so they clearly didn't cheat. Relevant comments. This is hilarious. Like if a guy went to a bar and tried to hook up with random women, but they all turned him down, and he tells his girlfriend, "But I never cheated." Your ex is as clueless as a rock. If nothing else, that's a good reason to leave her. I don't think she's clueless. I think she was desperate at that point. I guess she was so used to getting away with cheating that she never really thought about what to do if she actually got caught. I'm sorry, but I'm glad you found out before you got married. And even though nothing happened, the intention was there. If she had replied differently, saying she no longer wanted that life and to cut Bob out of her life because she was in a happy relationship with you. It would be a start. But she didn't. Has your ex tried reaching out to you? Even though she doesn't end up with you, I hope she can learn from this and not continue her cheating ways. I don't know, I've blocked her on everything I could think of. Frankly, I don't want to talk to her again. I'm sad to say this, but part of me wants to talk to her, part of me thinks that maybe I misread something. Honestly, reading the comments here is helping me push these feelings away. Story 3. My wife met her best friend Chuck in high school. They became close friends, and Chuck told her he was gay. My wife supported him. A year or so later, Chuck told his parents, who disowned him and kicked him out of the house. Chuck ended up living with my wife and her parents for the rest of high school. My wife and I started dating after college, and she told me all about Chuck and how close they were and how he was like a brother to her. I met Chuck, we got along, and we became friends. Chuck is a good person. At the time, Chuck was dating a man, and they ended up moving in together around the same time my wife and I got engaged. My wife and I have been married for 5 years now. I'm a project manager and took on a year-long project in another city. I have to leave the house at 5:30 in the morning every day and get home around 6:30 in the evening. My wife and I had a long talk about my job before I took on this project. We knew it would be a sacrifice for me to work so much, but I'm making more money than I ever thought I would. After this project, we can pay off our student debt and start trying to have a baby. We both agreed the money was worth it since it's only a year. That year will be up in late November. In March, Chuck caught his boyfriend cheating on him. He was devastated. My wife immediately told him he could move in with us. I was fine with him moving in, but not happy that my wife didn't even discuss it with me first. Chuck was pretty broken up, and my wife was giving him lots of love and attention. I was fine with it because I know how much she loves Chuck, and he did need her. I also did my best to support him and make him feel loved. For a while, this was fine, but as time went on, my wife continued to give all her attention to Chuck. Sometimes I get home from work, and neither of them is there, and I find out they went to a movie or out to dinner together. I don't think there is anything romantic or sexual between them, but it has been annoying that I get left out of all the plans. In the past few weeks, several things have happened. The three of us went to a party, and someone joked about Chuck being our third wheel, and my wife said, "Chuck is not the third wheel." I said, "What?" And she said, "I've known Chuck longer than I've known you." A week or so after that, my wife and Chuck went out dancing one night. I had to work the next day, so I stayed home. I woke up at about 3 in the morning, and my wife was not in bed. I went and found her and Chuck cuddled up on the couch, asleep with the TV on. Both of those things made me uncomfortable. I also realized I had been working so much that I was just sort of letting my wife and Chuck plan everything, and I had not planned a date night in a while. I decided I needed to be more active, so I planned a date night for last Friday. When I first told my wife, she was excited since we hadn't been on a date, just the two of us, in a while. Friday, I got home at 6:30 in the evening, and my wife and Chuck were not there. I took a shower and got ready. About 7:15 in the evening, I finally called my wife as we had reservations at 8. She answered, and when I asked where she was, she said she and Chuck had gone shopping and were getting some dinner. I was kind of stunned and asked about our date. She laughed and said, "Oh, I forgot." Oh well, and that was that. She didn't even invite me to join them. So a point I should make here, my father was very controlling of my mother and had an anger problem where he would yell and throw things. He never threw things at us, but it was still scary as a child. I have worked very hard not to be like him. I've tried to never be controlling of my wife or tell her what to do. I also tend to shut down when I get angry. When my wife forgot our date, I was mad, so I didn't say anything right then, but I knew I needed to address how I was feeling. So later that evening, I told her we needed to talk. I had written down some things so I could stay focused. I started by saying that I loved Chuck, and he was always welcome in our home, but that I felt like our marriage was suffering, and we needed to work on us. My wife exploded. She thought I was attacking Chuck. I guess I didn't word things well, and she started defending him and attacking me. We've never had a big fight before, we always talk and work things out. I was stunned that she was attacking me. She said some awful things, then she said, "Chuck is my soulmate, and you just have to get used to that." I just shut down. I didn't even know how to process that. I love my wife more than anything in the world, but at that moment, I realized she loves Chuck more than she loves me. I thought my wife and I were soulmates, but to hear her say she considers someone else her soulmate has been devastating. I don't remember the rest of the conversation. She left after a while and slept on the couch. She and Chuck left together on Saturday and were gone most of the day. When they got back, she acted like nothing had happened. On Sunday, she even made a small joke and batted her eyes at me, something she does when she's flirting with me. Normally, I love it, but this time it just made me sick. I told her this was a busy week at work and I was just going to stay at a hotel near the job site, something I have done a few times before, so I haven't seen her since Sunday night. I don't know what to do. Typing all of this up has made me realize I am really burned out with all this travel. Maybe I checked out too much and haven't given her enough attention, but how do I move forward knowing she will never love me as much as I love her? Minor update. Seeing many comments from women who say they have more than one soulmate has given me hope. To me, you only have one soulmate, but that's not a word my wife or I ever really use, and I just really hope she means it differently than how I took it. We have been texting back and forth some this week, and we spoke on the phone last night. It wasn't anything significant. She just called and said she missed me and couldn't wait until I got home. I'll be home tonight. I told her we should talk about our fight last Friday, and she agreed and said she hates that we fought and we need to work it out. She said she loves me. We will be talking tonight, and I guess I'll find out where I stand. Update, summary, my wife has a best friend, Chuck. Chuck's boyfriend cheated on him, and he moved in with us. My wife has spent all her time with Chuck, and when I confronted her about it, she said he was her soulmate. I made my first post on Thursday. When I took the time to think about it all and type it all out, I realized how burned out I have been with this work project. Friday morning, I met with my team and scheduled some time off coming up soon. I'm in a much better headspace just knowing I have that downtime soon. My wife and I had our fight on a Friday night, then I left on Monday and stayed out of town all week for my project. During that time, we texted back and forth every day, and we talked on the phone a few times. It was awkward because we both knew we needed to have a big talk, but over the phone, it wasn't the time or place. My wife texted me this Friday and said Chuck was gone for the weekend, so we could spend time just the two of us, and she wanted to make up for our missed date. I got home Friday evening, and we agreed to talk before doing anything else. I had written out everything I wanted to say, and she sat and listened. We talked for a long time, and we each went back to some things to get clarification. So I'm not going to try and replay everything we said, just the main parts in the way that makes the most sense. I told her how I didn't like her joke about me being the third wheel and how much it hurt that she forgot our date, and then how crushed I was when she said Chuck was her soulmate. There were some other little things too. When I was done, she said she was sorry and she was wrong for saying those things. She said I am not the third wheel, and I am her soulmate, and she asked if she could explain why she did and said what she did. When Chuck's parents first kicked him out in high school, he was in a bad place and had considered taking his life. He told my wife's mother, and they got him help. So when Chuck called in March about his boyfriend cheating on him, my wife panicked and was afraid he was going to hurt himself. She said she felt like she needed him close so she could watch him and keep him safe, and made a comment about how for the past 6 months, it seems like she and Chuck were living their best life together, and she said that she has been miserable this whole time, that she has been on the verge of a nervous breakdown. After our fight, she knew she was wrong and realized she needed to get help and let it go. She talked with Chuck, and he promised that he was a stronger person than he was in high school and promised that he was not even thinking about hurting himself. They agreed it was best if he moved out, both to give my wife and me time to work on us and so my wife wouldn't be obsessing over when he was coming and going. My wife wanted to talk to me last Sunday, but I had said I needed time, and she wanted to give me space. It was a long talk with lots of tears. She apologized many times. She said she was so concerned with Chuck's mental health that she attacked me because she thought I was going to make him move out, and she was lashing out. She acknowledged that she hurt me and said she loves me and she wants to work on herself and find ways to deal with fear and worry in a healthy way. We have never really had a big fight before, and we both agreed we could have handled it better, her by not lashing out and me by not shutting down. We agreed to start couples counseling to help us learn how to disagree in a more healthy way. We were both emotionally drained after the talk, so we just ordered some food and stayed in. We cuddled in bed to watch TV, talk, and just be together. We've missed each other a lot these past few months, and it was really nice to just hold her. The next day, Saturday, we had a day date. We went to breakfast, went shopping, saw a movie, and even got pedicures together. My toes look amazing. Several times throughout the day, she would just stop and look at me and say she had missed me and was so sorry she had pushed me away. Today, Sunday, we called Chuck, who was staying with another friend. He said he was sorry he had caused so much stress for my wife and me. He acknowledged he had been focused on himself and hadn't even realized that we were not doing well. He said he loved us both and is so grateful that we let him stay while he was getting over his breakup. He is looking at a few places and plans to be out in the next week or two. He did offer to move out right away, but I am okay with him staying a little longer. I think having a plan in place is the most important thing. Our relationship took a hit, but we love each other, and we are going to work on it. We've set some boundaries and also agreed to always make each other our top priority. I have a few more months left on this project, but we're going to make a point to go on a proper date at least once a week and reserve some cuddle time on the weekends. Thank you to everyone who replied or sent me a message based on my first post. I got some really good advice. I am hopeful this experience will make us better and make our relationship stronger.